Oh, there he is. We're live. Good morning. Well, good afternoon. A little late on the Combat Coffee morning live stream, but we're here. We're back. New studio. Excited to talk fighting. It's been a lot of crazy news in the combat sports world. A lot of different avenues too. UFC, boxing, Netflix, MMA. It's a lot to talk about, so I'm excited. We got Adrian Lorenzo on the decks. There he is. And we're here, Combat Coffee Club, 786 Sports. So let's just get into it, man, because there's been a lot. So this weekend was UFC 326, the BMF, Holloway versus Oliveira. We had the White House card announcement that everybody's been waiting for. We had Zuffa boxing. We had more Eddie Hearn versus Dana White. We had Francis Ngannou leaving the PFL. Very interesting. Tom Aspinall updates. We had Rousey versus Carano, Mayweather, Pacquiao. We have what else? Conor Benn signing with Dana White. There's just been a lot of movement, a lot of things going on. But I guess we'll start with the UFC 326 this weekend. Oliveira versus Holloway with the BMF. It was a great fight, but it wasn't a BMF fight, I guess, is what everyone's kind of saying, that if you're going to have a BMF title fight, you kind of have it. There's like a preconceived notion that it's throwing caution to the wind, stand and bang, for lack of a better term. But that's not really what we saw. It was more of a domination from Charles Oliveira, which if it was not a BMF title fight, I think everyone would be praising him. It's an amazing fight. Like, he literally controlled Max Holloway for 5 rounds and dominated him. But that's not the BMF style, which is not, it's not his fault. He went out there and did what he had to do, but it's this weird kind of agreement that people have made that the BMF just means, like, well, it does mean bad motherfucker, and we're just going to go out there and try to kill each other. And I think Max Holloway played a big part in that, especially with his last fight with Justin Gaethje, with his pointing down 10 seconds and he's already winning. But yeah, I think the belt, it's interesting. It's like the belt was brought in kind of like a one and done, but then they brought it back. But then I guess maybe they never thought what would happen if a grappler entered into the BMF title contention. You kind of lose that BMF sentiment where, yeah, he's just there to win the fight. Because, at the end of the day, it is the BMF, but he has a career and a division to think about. He can't just, stand and bang with Max Holloway and see what happens. And then, yeah, I'm the BMF, but if you lose, then what happens? It's weird, because that fight has title contentions. It's important, but with the BMF attached to it, it's like he won, but he didn't move the needle for himself because of what it was. So, like, people were talking about maybe the winner of this fight's Conor McGregor for a comeback fight. But now it's like, oh, do we want to see Charles Oliveira versus Conor McGregor? Like, that might be boring. He might just, try to control him for 5 rounds. If we want to see Conor, like, a good matchup, standing, striking. So it's interesting, because now what do you do with that BMF and the lineage and the challengers and the matchups have kind of never make sense. They're always like apart from each other, because it started with Nate Diaz and George Masvidal, which were at 170 pounds welterweight, and now we've got it all the way to 155, Charles Oliveira and Max Holloway. So there's no really like cohesion on that belt. It's just like, all right, we need a big fight, we need a belt, let's throw it on there.
Yeah, it wasn't what the people wanted to see.
Exactly.
Like at all. You shaped this entire card around what you hope would be a stand and bang fight, because that's what the BMF is, and it wasn't that, like, at all.
At all.
It wasn't even like for 10 seconds that.
It was the first 5 seconds. I think Max kind of was letting loose, like, oh, this is what we're doing, and then Charles was like, I don't like this.
This is, and I've been thinking about this a little bit watching the Islam fights. I've been thinking about this just watching more combat sports overall, more UFC especially. But like it seems to me that this could be solved by there being this may be a stupid comment, but like a time limit on amount of time you could be like in the grapple position. Like, I'm not saying by any means that it should be eliminated, but I think what we're talking about is like a whole fight being controlled on the ground. It's like that last Islam fight that I watched. I was like, all right, I can be impressed by this, but I'm not wrong to be like, all right, it's not what I want to see.
It's tough because it's like you could do that, but if we're talking about the BMF, I think what could make it more interesting if they're going to continue to do it is make that, forget about just having a belt, like make it like a whole different set of rules,
right,
which is actually would be like exciting for the fans. Like, oh, there is no time limit, or there is no grappling. You get to the ground and you have 10 seconds to get up, or it's a point, or whatever. They can come up with something that's really cool. Maybe like old school UFC 1, like literally 20 minutes. Take it back to Japan with I forgot the name of the organization, Pride. But like there's no stakes in it. But I don't think you can eliminate it completely from a regular fight, because that's kind of what makes it. It's tough because it's like, how do you like if you are in a street fight and someone takes you down and controls you? I mean, that's what that guy decided to do, and you can't do nothing about it unless you get up and and every fight starts standing up. So that's the other caveat where it's like, yeah, but we're starting standing up. It's your job to not let him take you down. But it's true, because a lot of the last couple big fights you've seen that, where it's just domination and control, and then you're kind of like,
Yeah, I think the control needs to be with the intent of like a choke or like a ground and pound.
Right.
I don't think you could just kind of sit there and like there were points where Max Holloway's like smiling into the judges table, like, yeah, I can't really do anything here, but like I'm also not being hurt. I'm getting tired.
yeah,
But I'm not being like, I'm not taking elbows, I'm not taking hammer fists. We're just kind of in a stalemate position. And I feel like in boxing, when you get into a clinch, like there's a certain amount of time that the ref comes in, like, all right, like back to let's reset this. I don't see that being so out of place in this. I feel like there's probable adjustment that will be made if this goes in this direction, because it feels like once the grapplers get hold of the belts, I feel like they don't let them go.
Yeah.
Like a guy like Ilia Topuria has to come around to kind of dethrone that has the like a strong grappling position, but can also strike. So it's like, I don't know. I feel a little. It's anticlimactic watching those fights.
Yeah, and I think what happens is those grapplers get into those championship fights, and either you're trying to get the belt or you're trying to retain it. So like you want to just win the fight, because that's what's going to get you the belt. So I think they kind of fall into, okay, if this is working, controlling, like I'm not going to risk losing my position or striking or going for a submission if I'm just controlling him and kind of peppering him a little bit. If it's working, like they rather secure the win versus like Max Holloway is winning the whole fight and he's willing to risk it the last 20 seconds, just standing and banging with anyone. So I think that kind of plays into it. But I mean, might be something where if you're not advancing your position in some way, then you can't just control, even though you're controlling the guy, but you have to engage. You have to do something, or maybe they stand them up or reset. But yeah, I mean, because now it's like if every champion becomes a high-level grappler, we're, like you said, we're going to need an Ilia Topuria to come around and hopefully negate that every time. But I mean, these guys are just dominant. The thing is, it's hard. It's hard to catch up to these guys, because if you haven't been doing it since you were 5 years old, and that exact style of fighting and grappling, like a Islam or a Khamzat, like you don't have enough time or years to catch up while you're also advancing in your MMA, your striking, your grappling, everything else. It's like no one's gonna really catch up unless it's someone that comes around that is on that level, like a Ilia Topuria, but that also mixes it up. It's tough.
And I'm not suggesting the elimination of it, because it's a whole, like jiu-jitsu, it's a whole, obviously like a martial art that's dominant in this sport, but like a time frame, like once you engage or once you kind of get on the ground or after the shoot, whatever, like some amount of time feels like it makes sense, where you can't just like hang out in that position forever.
Yeah.
Like without and once what I don't know, like a shot clock kind of thing for how much time you can spend down there. And I think because it's human nature to want to see people strike. I feel like it's fucking back to gladiator shit. This is why boxing became boxing. Like it's not like if boxing was in a clinch the whole time and like whoever controlled the clinch, like it wouldn't actually be a thing. So, and I'm sure all the BJJ guys are like rolling their eyes right now. But you've entered the world of entertainment now. You're not just like purity of the mixed martial arts sport. Like it's an entertainment space. So that shit is not nearly as entertaining as like the Gaethje fight, the Holloway Gaethje fight, or even the Holloway Poirier fight. Like those are that's what you want to see.
No, and it's funny because even like the video game has a stand and bang option, but it's like there is a world where you could. I mean, it's just like they're a whole entire organization, so they have enough. Like they make their own rules. They could do whatever they please. So maybe there is like a one-off, stand and bang rules only fight in the undercard or something like that. Like I think that'd be cool. I think they get more excitement out of the fans of like, oh, this is different. Just like in some of the Netflix cards that we'll talk about later, like some of them or even other organizations, it's like one championship does this where it's a MMA fight, it's a kickboxing fight, there's a BJJ match in there, and then they kind of just mix up all the combat sports together. But I mean, I think the UFC is just like that. This is a formula, and this is what we do.
Yeah, look, I mean, I come from the baseball side of things. We went a long time with having no, like, the American League or the National League having no DH. Pitchers hit all the time. And now, like, you don't even remember the days where pitchers hit anymore. You just, like, there's DH in both leagues. So, like, even though, and for a long time, it's going to ruin the sports, blah, 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 blah. We don't even remember those times. Yeah. Like, we don't, like, we yearn for them. Like, there are things that are just natural, organic adjustments that you make based on, like, where your sport is as opposed to where it started. And if you look at where it started, like to the old days of like UFC 1 and stuff, like we've come a long way. Like the rules have shifted a lot, so they can consistently continue to shift, and it's not some major issue. And I'm sure, I mean, you could almost see it on Dana's like face when he's like, giving the belts and stuff. Like when it's like a grappler and it's a boring fight, it's like face like, oh, whatever, dude. Like, yeah, great. And he's like teeing it up so that it is, more of a, because he knows it, and that's, I mean. He's in boxing, and boxing is purely striking. And it still has appeal for that reason. So I still think UFC is top dog, and it's not really going anywhere, but adjustment is perhaps due.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the thing, that they're the top dog and they're miles ahead. So, now they're getting their hands into the boxing and this and that. So it's like, the whole, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But there is, I think, other players coming in where no one's ever going to catch up as an organization, but like the Netflix cards and those one-off big fights, like they do get people excited because it's something different, it's something new. So I mean, you're seeing now, like I was speaking earlier, of the Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano. Like that's a fight that doesn't really make sense, but it makes all the sense. But it could have been in the UFC, but maybe they're not really trying to do those type of fights. But I guarantee you people are going to watch. And now that they, PFL let go of Francis Ngannou, now he's going to be in that card. It's another interesting thing. And then we just learned, Jon Jones not going to be in the White House card. He's pissed. He wants to get released. That could be interesting. He could play in the free market. He could get a lot of money from a Netflix, or, Jake Paul could come in and figure something out. Now you might even see a Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones that everyone's been asking for years somewhere else. And the thing is that, UFC doesn't have to play ball. They're locked in for billions with Paramount. So it's interesting now with the money being thrown around on Netflix and boxing. They just signed Conor Benn for $15 million, which is, it's an interesting time where now because the fighter pay was always a thing. But now it's like in your face. I think
now the numbers are public in terms like with the Paramount stuff. Now it's like, wait, what? You guys are making how much?
Because it used to be like, oh, we don't get paid enough, and certain fighters get more. But it's always was within the bubble of the UFC. But now it's like, yo, Paramount Plus, $15 million, Conor Benn. Netflix 20 mil, this, that. Like, okay, why? Like, how are we not getting money? When is the money coming to us? So you're starting to see people like talk a little more than usual, because usually fighters would never speak up. But
A lot more.
a lot
I
more.
feel like my feed is full of it. And like Ariel Helwani's entire week has been spent talking about this in particular, especially like with the Eddie Hearn stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into also. But I mean, this fighter pay issue is I feel like it's like Dana White's not going to be able to brush this one off for too much longer.
Yeah, it's interesting because it feels, people are calling like a revolution, but there's always been times in the sport where people start to speak up and they start to organize, but nothing really happens. But the thing is that now it's all out there. But I do think you got to play devil's advocate. It's like sometimes people don't believe what Dana White says, but I think just naturally, like you said, there you can't really, you can't just leave the pay where it's at forever. And I think he did mention something about like Conor Benn getting 15 mils. When fighters get paid that much money, and when people get paid more money, that's always good for the fighters. Because I think eventually it will trickle down. I think it's just they're like holding that off. They don't want to like release the floodgates of like everyone's getting money, but eventually like everyone, the money will rise. It's just how much and how many fighters, I don't know. Like,
yeah, the thing about trickle down economics is that at least if you use like the U.S. history, like since Reagan, like that shit doesn't work. Like it's not actually real. It never trickles down fast enough for the people that are waiting for the trickle down. So what it really comes down to, I think, is going to change the fundamental structure of guys accepting UFC contracts or shortening the amount of time that they feel they're going to be under UFC contracts, and that's where leverage is created. And when leverage is created, then the other side of it is that it's clear that the UFC is willing to not activate Jon Jones for the White House fight, like for what seems like monetary reasons. I know they're going to deny it. I know. I don't love that it feels like Dana White feels like he could just be. He says he doesn't say truthful things or non-truthful things, but like there's clear there's clear times where he's kind of talking on both sides of this, and I get it. Like he's the sole spokesperson. He's getting peppered with questions from either side, but at the same time, it's like I don't know. We're reaching a threshold where guys are smart to the game now, right? And now with this Eddie Hearn thing and Aspinall being represented, Eddie Hearn being Aspinall's manager now, it's like now you have kind of personal animosity mixed in with just real negotiation. And I think the $15 million thing for Conor Benn, that's gonna be like the sticking point, and everybody's. It's going to be the more obvious one, but the most obvious is like the gate numbers. It's clear that the UFC gate numbers are very, very strong. Like between the Paramount stuff, whether it be like we're not in the pay-per-view era anymore, but the revenue generated between gate and TV, and if you just like you in any pie, you'd be like, okay, what should go to the fighters in this? Like if you break it down now, it feels like a very, very small slice is going to fighter pay. And that doesn't make any sense. Because it's the fighters that are driving this. It's not really the promo that's driving. Like the sport is healthy in and of itself, so you're gonna watch. It's gonna get people to watch. But at the same time, like you can't live in this world forever where they're like 10% of the total like pie for any fight. That I feel like that's disproportionate completely, and you can only live in that space for so long. It's almost like. Be grateful that this got you to this point to where you're one of the biggest sports in the world, but now it's time for a reshuffling. And you'll see it with guys like this Jon Jones thing will be like a sticking point.
Yeah.
But also they're going to keep trucking forward. The White House event is going to kill.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's interesting to talk about though.
No, for sure. I think the UFC is like the most interesting organization because it's not a traditional sports league like the NFL, NBA, MLB. Where like it's like this, the president is just like flat out there, saying whatever he wants, which is cool because the other leagues kind of like you have to tone down things you say. But then there's also the other side where it's like, you kind of poo-poo on some fighters or you don't promote certain people the way you should or vice versa. But it's true. Like, I think this also is going to affect how younger fighters come into the game where before – almost every fighter that's trying to get into the UFC or any local organization is willing to take any fight. for however much amount of money just to get to that next stepping stone, that next step that might get them into the UFC. Like they'll just take everything. Oh, 10,000, 10 and 10 to fight in the UFC. Let's do it. I just need to get in the door and then prove myself, maybe get a knockout, and then, continue my career. I think now maybe fighters are more smart to the game. They might not just accept the first thing that's thrown at them. So you might start seeing these younger fighters, like these 20-year-olds, 20-something-year-olds, maybe already having managers early on that are telling them, like, oh, no, you should do it like this, or maybe sign a one-fight deal, or you'll start to see shorter deals, like you're saying, like one-offs that are not tying you into, because that's the thing, like that's the other issue where a lot of these guys aren't seeing money, but it's also the UFC isn't doing anything wrong. It's like you're in a deal. Like your contract, you still have 4 more fights left. So technically, yeah, like this is what you signed up for, even though now we're in a different deal and we're getting more money. This is what you signed up for 4 years ago. But the thing is that some people are able to renegotiate, some people have more leverage. But the Jon Jones thing is very interesting because it's out in the public. He's saying he was willing to play ball, but they didn't want to for money reasons or whatever the case is. But now he's at a point where he can really make some money because he's not like he is a veteran, but he's not like somebody that, oh, let me just go to another organization at my tail end of my career and make some extra money. Like, no, he's got star power. So he can pull something off here that fighters might start to look at, like, okay, what are my options? Should I maybe sign less fights for less money, but I can do things outside of the octagon? Or do you take the traditional route? Oh, let me 6-fight deal, XYZ amount of money, and hope that I perform and make my way to the top to then renegotiate, hopefully. And the thing is, you got to like time that. Like, they're not stupid either. Like, what if you're by your 4th fight, you're at a championship caliber main event? You're not going to get that championship caliber money because you're still in that contract. So it's like that's why a lot of fighters pick and choose who they fight and when they fight, because it's also like they're looking at the long term. Like, I don't want to peak too early. I don't want to go too fast, too slow, because my contract runs out and then I have 2 more fights and this and that, but I want that championship money. Now there's no pay-per-view points. So it's interesting, the fighter pay.
That's why this Eddie Hearn thing is so interesting to me, because he's now inserting himself into the process of, like, with an actual champion, right? Or I guess he had to vacate the belt for this, like for this upcoming fight. But like, it's a guy that was actually the heavyweight champion, and it's not just some random fighter outside of the structure. It's, if he's not the champion, he kind of enters as the number 1 contender no matter what. And I think that representation is the key word here, right? Like, it's important to note that UFC is so young, so it hasn't gone through its maturation of, like, its labor disputes, basically, which is what this is. And, like, other leagues have gone through this, like baseball being the oldest one, has gone through many seasons of labor disputes. And we're still in an era where you got guys that are making league minimum, and they might be the best player in baseball or on their team, or have a guy that's half the player that he is making 3 times the amount because of where he is in his service time. And I think that representation comes into play. Like, if you don't have a countermeasure on the other side of the balance, like, to your point, this has been a one-sided kind of Dana White decides what happens here. It's been more of like a monarchy than anything else. And now, like, when the representation gets inserted, that's when leverage starts being created on the other side of it. Whether they like the representation or not, I was hearing Ariel Helwani say something about how, like, the UFC basically tries to deal with fighters directly at all times. Even when they have a manager, they try to, like, okay, manager, you stay outside the room. We're going to talk about this one-on-one. And I think that those days, that's why I think the Eddie Hearn thing is significant, because I think that that's cracking that open a little bit. I'm sure managers have already been in place and negotiating deals, but now it feels like more out in the open. And I just don't think representation is important for this exact reason. Because if you don't have the guys at the top creating the leverage, you'll always be in a scenario where the guys at the bottom willing to do it for anything will kind of insert, and they'll be like, okay, we'll just go to this guy. In every major labor dispute, that's happened. Even when, like, in baseball, when the shutdown happened, there were guys that they called scabs, right? That that were willing to play because it's like, hey, I get to play professional baseball, while the other guys are sitting out. So there's always, all sports reach this cycle of things that happen. So we'll see how they handle it. I think it's an interesting point, but I think fighter pay's got to go in one direction that it's not currently going, which is up.
Yeah.
I mean, you
But
can't brag about a $1 billion, like a $7 billion deal.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then, like, when you actually look at fighter pay, it's completely disproportionate. Don't brag about it like that. Don't.
Yeah.
It's you kind of
Or
can't have it
explain
both ways.
why.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, it's a business decision. This is why, whatever. I mean, maybe that is a reason. But the thing is, the other leagues and organizations have had players associations, unions. The UFC doesn't have that. So, like, that would be actually the first step, which they've tried in the past, like 2, 3, 4 times, and never comes to fruition. But there is no bargaining agreements. There's no collective that is coming together, because the guys at the top are making the money and they're cool with that. They don't want to, rock the boat. And then the guys at the bottom, like you said, are willing to do it for nothing because they want the opportunity. But it's the guys in the middle, the journeymen, or the up and comers, or the guys that are like always scratching and clawing for a title fight, that they deserve the money that should trickle down to them. But it's tough because no one's gonna go to bat with you. No one wants to rock the boat. That's the UFC. So it's one of those things that unless the fighters really understand, but it's also that thing that the fighting career is so short that you're almost like, why am I gonna fight this battle if I'm done in 3-4 years? So it's like that you never get that. But maybe now that the sport is getting older, hopefully the fighters now of this generation that eventually retire and go out, because like the older fighters, they never, they were the pioneers. They never really saw what this was going to be. The Chuck Liddells, the Randy Couture's, the George St. Pierre's, Matt Hughes, like those guys, they weren't thinking of the future. They were just like, wow, we're fighting for like hundreds of thousands, maybe $1 million. Like, that's amazing. But maybe now these guys that grew up with the sport, with the way it exploded, maybe, they can be the ones to like turn the tide. But you never know. You never know with money. But yeah, with the Eddie Hearn thing, that's interesting too, because he's been on all sides of everything. He's been talent management. He is a promoter. He's booked fights. He's put on fights. He's signed fighters. He's, done every which way in the combat sports in boxing. But now he's bringing that to the MMA circle. I think that'll be interesting. And obviously it's fun because it's him versus Dana White. It makes it interesting. But that's another one because, he didn't vacate the title. He's technically still the heavyweight champion. This is going to be for the interim champion. But that's going to be interesting when he comes back. Like, how is that going to play in? Because that's a big fight, and now they have no Jon Jones, so they need him to fight the winner. Either one, whoever wins, Pereira or Gane, that's a big fight for Aspinall, because it's a storyline for either way. So he does have a little leverage, but it's going to be interesting to see how they negotiate him coming back, and with Eddie Hearn on the other side of the table. I mean, I don't know how much money he's going to be able to get for a fight like that.
I think it's going to move the line forward for the rest, like for everybody. So, and you'll see this model of managers being a little more prevalent than they are. Where right now, I feel like they're behind the scenes for the most part. Like this feels like the first one that's out in front.
But don't correct me if I'm wrong. In like MLB or NFL, like it's illegal to not have unless you represent yourself. It's like you have to have your manager or agent not present, but negotiate the terms or your money. Or is that...
I don't know if it's strictly like illegal, but it's like so frowned upon, and it's such a bad practice. And agents control other players as well. It's very like this situation, like, Eddie Hearn represents one guy. I'm sure he's going to represent more, but like it's almost like a practice. You as the team don't want to get into that of trying to like box out the agent, because you don't know how that's going to come around and affect you with another player that he represents. And the union is strong enough to like castigate you basically and like fine you if you do things like that. So I don't know if it's technically illegal. You can go directly to the player, but it feels very. I could be wrong about that, and it is actually legal, but it just feels so frowned upon. And like, no, you're not going to go around do this. And when you do go around it, it's everybody recognizes that it's bad practice. Whereas right now, it feels like in the UFC, it's standard practice.
Yeah.
So like that's shifting like right now in real time, and that's where I think like we can't act like it's going to be the same structure after this. Even though I'll bet if Dana White was here answering that, he's going to white knuckle this and kind of like move forward anyway, because that's the style, and it's been an effective style for him. But like landscapes shift, you know.
Yeah, it's also crazy because there is no barrier to entry to be a manager of a professional MMA fighter or even boxer. You are one.
Because there's no collective bargaining.
Yeah.
Right. And like you have to be a certified agent, for example, you know, certified through the union, which is all collective bargaining. So yeah, it's kind of, it's not in place because the organization structure is not in place, and seemingly intentionally, it doesn't seem to be in the UFC's benefit to allow unionization.
No, at all. And it only, I mean, not just monetarily, but like because some UFC fighters might get a manager just because they're young in their career. They want someone to do the deals for them, but it might not be the best option for them at the time. Like if they're not certified, if they haven't been in the game long enough, they don't have that experience, it might shoot them in the foot early on in their career instead of, like you said, having some sort of certification or something that, like, okay, this guy is definitely an agent. He has his accreditation to be an MMA agent or manager. It's tough because when you're young, you'll take any fight, you'll take any representation.
And what complicates it further to me, it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like the subjective fight making. It's not like 1 fights 2, 3 fights 4. If 3 beats 4 or 4 beats 3, they fight 1. It's a lot more subjective in terms of like, yeah, there are like some pound for pound rankings, but you're not seeing like a direct like you could beat the number 3 guy as the number 4 guy, and that doesn't mean you're gonna get a title fight.
Yeah, no, and every fight or fight card is not the same. Like we could talk about it now. The White House card. If they offer you the White House card, I don't think you really care who you're fighting. It's more of the event and the prestige of fighting at the White House. Like, you know, a lot of people saying O'Malley versus the hobby is kind of a weird, like, you know, it should have been Sanhagen maybe, or Peter Young is who you wanted originally. But, you know, it's at the White House. You're going to take that. So it's like a higher ranked guy is fighting a little bit lower guy just because it's at the White House. And it's a good matchup for him. But then, like you see,
we're gonna put a Russian dude at the White House fight. Peter Yan is Russian, right?
Yeah, but he supposedly he wasn't ready. Well, he trains in Thailand, but you know, yeah, it's interesting. And then you have Ruffy versus Chandler, which is like almost like, all right, Chandler, you thugged it out for us. You waited long enough. Here's a fight, but that's a bad matchup for him. You know, then you have Lopez versus Garcia. Lopez just fought for the title. Now he's fighting Garcia. It's kind of like, you know, let's just throw him on there. Bo Nickel versus Dawkins, 2 U.S. guys. I mean, that's a cool fight, but Bo Nickel just fought the Riddler, right? That was his last fight. It was a pretty high-ranked fight. Now this guy wasn't even in the UFC last week. So it's a really interesting I think they just hyped it up simply way too much that a lot of people kind of were like, you know, felt disappointed with the announcement. But I mean, on paper, it's an amazing card. There's almost 3 or 4 of the biggest stars in the UFC fighting at the White House. Obviously, they wanted Jon Jones. That would have been ginormous, but you know, they couldn't get him for the White House. Which,
why no Islam? Didn't they have the chance for it to be Ilya Islam?
Supposedly he's injured and won't be ready by June. But I mean, the thing is with the UFC, you never know. You never really know what's who's what. Did they really negotiate? Did they not? Did this guy say yes? Did this guy say no? Was it too much money? Was it other reasons? Like, it's all smoke and mirrors.
It never came out what was the big fight that fell through, because there was one matchup. I would have thought that it was Islam, you know, not falling through to be the Tapir main card.
They haven't confirmed it. It could. People were saying it was Jon Jones. It was Islam. It seems like it could have been Islam because of the timing, and that Gaethje didn't even know he was going to fight till the day before. But it also could have been
the one.
It also could have been a whole separate fight that just didn't make it on and completely fell through. I think that I think they're gonna add one more before everything's done, because it's only 6 fights. they're keeping it small, but I think there was going to be one more, and maybe they'll pull one out of the rabbit hat just to, give it a little more juice. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's like the Sphere. Like, I'm tuning in because it's at the White House. I'm excited that there's also great fights on it, but it's just, how is this gonna play out on the White House lawn? Like, that's crazy to me. How's the octagon gonna look? How the walkout's gonna look? Even I want to see a documentary of how even this event was put together. Of like, because you have to clear and vet every single person that comes in there. And that's a whole other monster to like put on this event.
It's a good thing there isn't anything else going on in the world.
Yeah, that's also like crazy. Like, every time I see people talk about the White House card and like, oh, this fight, it should have been this, it should have been that. I wish it was Jon Jones. I'm like, bro, are we even gonna make it to June 14th? Like, is the White House, like, they had to have a backup, because you can't just guarantee that there's gonna be an MMA UFC event on the White House card. Like, you don't know what can happen from here to then, or the day before, or it's the White House. You can't take the risk. You have to have like something, or you just cancel it. But I doubt they would do that. But there's a lot going on to just be like, yeah, we're having a UFC. And also, I mean, I hate to be, like a cynic, but that's a big event happening at the White House, public to everyone, where all very important officials are going to be there across all departments. God forbid, I don't want to say anymore, but that's a real concern. That's not like no joke. It's not. You're at the White House. Like, that's crazy. That's scary almost. If I was a fighter, that'd be in the back of my head. That's added pressure.
Yeah, I think that that's the part that I think that they will have handled for sure. Like, I think that it'll be and they'll be kind of proud to show it off too. Like, proud to show off whether it be like military presence or whether it be like whatever. I see it as it's almost like holding like a military parade. It's like the equivalent of like a military parade.
Yeah,
that's the way that I see it.
It's just interesting that it's, of all sports, fighting. It gives it a little more like that gladiator feel. Like, look at the fighters in our White House Coliseum here. Yeah. Like, because I think it'd be dope if maybe once a year they did, like, I don't know, basketball, football. That'd be tough. Baseball, something, something cool, like an event like that. But the UFC, it's obviously his favorite sport, but it seems like very Romanesque.
It is, dude. There's something really primal that we just like as human beings. We like combat sports, and especially in this era of America that we're in, we like it even more. But what I think is dope is despite it being the White House card, like, UFC is such a global sport that even the White House card has to be filled with a bunch of guys that aren't American, including most of the champions, right? Like, it's interesting. Like, even in this like very American event, like, you're still showing off like a global range. I think it's dope.
UFC fan 6387 said Brock Lesnar versus Daniel Cormier at the White House. That I don't think that'd work out, but
that's like a Netflix fight.
Yeah, probably down the line. I mean, yeah, there was other fights that probably, but who knows? I think there's a lot more factors that we as the audience or fans know that go into booking a White House card. That it's not just like, oh, let's make the craziest fights. But I mean, there probably could have been, for a lot of factors that some guys weren't available. Maybe some guys didn't want to fight, or I don't know. You never know. There's also no money being made on this event. There is money being made,
right, dude,
but there's no gate. I mean, So, but I mean, the exposure and the advertisement that's going to be on this is insane.
I thought for sure they'd find a way to and you could have done it through the BMF, like to get Conor in there in some capacity. Like, I thought they for sure would have wedged that in there.
Nah,
but there's clearly
no
other
way.
stuff going on.
No, they would never. Like, Conor himself said it. Like, they never, like, during COVID, he was ready. They didn't want to book him. The UFC 300, they don't want to book him because you don't need anything else when Conor fights. So why are you gonna put all your eggs? Why are you gonna put all your eggs in one basket when to his words, you could do a fire sale where you do UFC 300 and then UFC 301 with Conor McGregor. It's almost the equivalent. So it makes sense. It would have been, if you're stacking the deck to make something epic, yeah, Jon Jones, Conor McGregor, let's throw them all on there. But it makes sense. I would like to see a Conor McGregor versus whoever in Vegas, and let that just be the comeback fight, the hype all around that. Let's put all the promotion on Conor, not the White House.
Why aren't we seeing Conor at all?
I think it's the money, man. It's money and timing, and like we were saying earlier, contracts, because he has, I think, 2 fights left on his deal. So the UFC isn't stupid. Like, how are we gonna play this? Do we wait for this to happen to then book him? Also, who is he gonna fight? The pay-per-view, or I'm sorry, the numbered event has to make sense. And then also, Conor Benn is getting 15 mil. Like he said, what does that mean for him? Because, I mean, that's a lot. He's worth a lot more.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is it's clear that they can do whatever they want, them being the UFC. So this concept that, like, for whatever reason they can't integrate Conor McGregor, it's clear they can do what they want. So it's clear that they don't want to do that for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Whether it be setting precedent, which I kind of understand, but it's almost like, I don't know, it's depraving the people of what they really want to see.
And the thing is, in the past,
it's clear it's not about shit going on off the field.
No,
as you can see from like watching any Sean Strickland press conference, like they don't mind whatever it looks like aesthetically.
No,
and I don't have a position on that necessarily, or at least not what I'm going to express here. But like, it's clear like that those aren't reasons that stop them from doing anything.
Especially now where he's been the most vocal and most adamant about being dialed in. Like he's been training. He's like, all right, like I'm already in camp to get into camp. He's always, all the videos you see of him now are at the gym. Like he's actively waiting for a fight. He's tweeting like, all right, waiting for a fight, talking to the UFC, this, that. Who knows what goes behind the doors. But I think with Conor, it's like, yeah, you need, they want to get it right. And I think also in the past, you didn't really have, like he would never go, one, because he wouldn't want to, but two, there wasn't really an option to like, oh, what are you, like, where are you going to fight? Like, you're going to go to PFL, you're going to go to Bellator? Like, no, you're going to stay in the UFC, or maybe you do a one-off with Mayweather or whatever. But I think with things of like the Eddie Hearns and the Netflix, like there's an interesting play where, you know, guys, you know, maybe legally you can't get out of a contract, but there's other ways you could do things where, I mean, Netflix will be willing to pay Conor McGregor Sports and Entertainment LLC and Conor McGregor to fight XYZ on Netflix, and that's guaranteed millions. Like, there's deals now where you can do one-offs that you would have to fight maybe 2 or 3 times in the UFC to make.
Yeah, I just hope I don't want to see like a celebrity boxing match, dude.
Right.
Like, I feel like I've had my fill of these, and now with this this Logan Paul stuff, like throwing out a challenge to any NFL guy, and I just feel like we've entered the circus, and it's fine. I guess it is what it is, but like there's a real sport happening parallel to this, like a couple real sports happening parallel to this with more than enough to entertain. I guess I'm not the guy that's going to continue to like, oh, let's keep diving deeper into the celebrity fight.
But I think
I've reached my limit.
No, but I think in the beginning that's how it started. But I think what I'm saying is now there's an interesting point where I could see Conor McGregor going out, let's just call it Netflix, and negotiating a deal with like a Nate Diaz. Like, he brings in someone.
It's Khabib, dude. How do we not do Khabib,
dude,
Conor?
That's a great point.
Off like parallel fight to the UFC.
Then the crazy thing is, forget about Netflix. Like, because Conor's obviously always the A side, but like, let's flip it to Khabib. If Khabib was like, you know what, I want to come back, bro, you get one of those like Russian organizations, bro, they would pay like you shouldn't. They paid Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier on a reality show in Russia because I mean they got a bag for it. But those, like, you could even do it on that. Like, maybe it's not even televised in the U.S., but you know how many people would pay, or you put it behind a paywall or whatever the case is. But Khabib versus Conor in a Russian organization, It's the same thing.
It'd be the biggest fight in history. It would be the biggest fight in history right now if they did that next week.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
And you don't need an undercard. But that's what I'm saying. And then especially where there is a little bit of appetite for it, because like we were talking earlier, and we can end on this, like the Ronda Rousey, Gina Carano, Mayweather, Pacquiao, like those would have been amazing 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But people are still going to watch. It's not going to be as epic as a Conor and Khabib. But like we're saying, if a Conor and Khabib type of matchup outside of the UFC would come in and happen, now you're talking about big money, because Netflix, for whatever reason, believes these are valuable fights to put on a main event. So if you got a Conor Khabib, a Conor Nate, Conor Masvidal, independently, like, but you know, it's not as easy as just getting it together and going outside of the UFC, because these guys are always under contract. Even Khabib is still under contract. That's the other thing. Once you retire, unless the UFC is like, okay, we'll let you go, which they have done to some guys that they're in good graces with, you're still technically under contract for a couple of years. I forgot what it is. And you can't fight in other organizations.
Yeah, the thing that gets me though is like, well then like, all right, then UFC make it happen. You know, because you talked about how short these fighters' careers are. It's not like we can put these things off for like 5-6 years, because then that's it. The primes are gone, and like,
Yeah.
you don't want to watch 42-year-old guys like, you know, pulling a hamstring and, you know, or I don't know, insert whatever injury or kind of like older guy syndrome stuff to happen. Like, you know, Jon Jones has arthritis in his hips, and that's like the thing we're talking about in terms of not being able to put a fight together. So, yeah, I feel like we can talk in circles around this all day, but it's fun to talk about.
Nah, I love it. And I think that's what I'm also most excited about combat sports in general. I feel like every week, every month, there's something new, but I feel like now the whole what's getting even more interesting is the business behind the business of like, all right, now there's like fights between organizations, there's beefs between managers, there's money being thrown around everywhere. So like that whole thing is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And then of course the fights, the White House, UFC, boxing, Netflix, everything that's coming around the corner. But it's going to be interesting the next couple of years to see where combat sports keeps going and where money keeps going, and what fighters are going to be doing and positioning themselves, and how they're going to be moving, and deals that are going to be made. Like I'm really excited, because I think Jon Jones was going to do his last fight, retire, and say he fought in the White House, and boom, beautiful career. But I think now he might, out of spite, fight outside of the UFC and get a nice big bag just to say he did it.
Yeah, I feel like you can't be asking for out of your contract to just like right into the sunset. Like, you're asking out of your contract for a reason. And so that's the out of spite. That seems correct.
And the thing is, you know, I forgot the saying, but when your enemy's enemy becomes your friend, then you start talking to like people like the Eddie Hearns, Francis Ngannou's, like, oh, maybe we should fight each other. Like how can we make that happen?
People with enough gripes can kind of push it over the line and make something happen. I think shit, Ngannou Jones, I'd tune in.
Yeah, I'll definitely tune in. But thank you guys for tuning in to Combat Coffee Club 786 Sports. We're definitely gonna try to do it again. I think we gotta rip them live more often.
I think we definitely do. And if I could just kind of add one last thing, I before Combat Coffee Club, I cared about mixed martial arts like almost not at all, and now I can say that I'm more locked in than I even am to baseball right now.
Oh yeah.
So like I don't know what that says. Like I can be, you know, talking shit about like the things I have gripes about it, but I'm talking about it and I'm locked in and I'm tuning in. And I will say this Paramount Plus thing for me that already had Paramount Plus, because I love I don't know, I love a lot of the content that they already had on there, but it's so much more accessible now. And the history, the bank of fights, like we play it here in the studio all the time. Like we're playing Chuck Liddell, we're playing George St. Pierre, like we're doing all this. Like I don't want that to come off as anything other than like I'm locked in, I'm intrigued. So, and that's all thanks to Combat Coffee Club. Combat Coffee Club. I'm out.
Can't wait to do a live stream, but for the next UFC, I think maybe in April for Miami. Obviously, we're in Miami, so we got to do one. if we don't go live. I don't know. We'll see. We get those press passes. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next one.